Hello, beautiful alchemist. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and today we have a beautifully inspiring conversation with a woman named Sherisse Bisram. And I can't even tell you, it seemed like the hour wasn't enough for all that she had to share. Sherisse is a dancer and she has traveled the world. She has performed globally. She also performed in a Marvel movie called The Eternals. She has done phenomenal work as a dancer. However, she has combined her love of dance with the powerful healing tools that help us come into these paths of self-realization. And she's doing a lot of phenomenal work to support young women, although her work extends through all ages. But you will see how taking the time to pause, even during the time in the pandemic, what it helped her to realize about herself and how this moment of self-realization really changed not only her path, but redirecting her work in a lot of ways, which again, I'm sure will inspire a lot of you. Her story will resonate with so many of you. I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. So Sherisse can be found on her website, SherisseBisram.com. You can also find her on social media at Sherisse_Bisram.com. And she has an upcoming class, Permission to Shine, that starts at the end of this month. So you can learn more about that. But really, her conversation, she shared so many bits and nuggets of wisdom that the hour just didn't seem like enough. So I want to thank you, of course, for being here. I know a lot of you are new to the community, so welcome. There are so many episodes in the archives. When the podcast first started, it was primarily me, my journey, what it is that I experienced through the practices of Reiki, meditation, energy work. And in more recent years, I've had this gorgeous opportunity of interviewing other healers, teachers, practitioners, authors, people just sharing their roads and their paths to healing to inspire all of us, because I believe that we do learn and grow and exchange. And sometimes hearing someone else's story and recognizing ourselves in other people's stories not only validate us, but can inspire us in so many ways to keep us in those moments of staying diligent in our practice, because some days it can be tough. So I hope that this conversation today does inspire you. I also want to let you know, if you don't know already, I have an app. So there are so many things you can access on the app. You can download it for free. You can download it on the Apple App Store, or if you have an Android, you can go to Google Play and search for The Energetic Alchemist. So the Energetic Alchemist app is up and live, and you just register for the app, enter your name and your email address, and you have access to free content, including you can watch these interviews of Reiki Radio through the app. You can also join me on Tuesdays for Reiki Radio Roundtable discussions, where we can come together live to talk about your practice, what you thought of the episodes, just whatever it is that you would like to chat about. So you're welcome to join me for those. There is a lot of content that will be on the app that is already there to support you in your processes of energetic alchemy, including some little mini videos that give you tips. There are guided journeys. There's also the option to do drop-in classes for the upcoming round of the Alchemy Circle. So there's just so much, but it's just very convenient because it's just one app. Just download it now, and you can connect with me and community in some new ways. So that is it for now. I want to thank Sherisse again for coming to have this amazing conversation, and I can't wait to hear what you think about all that she shares. So I will see you beauties on the other side. Okay, everyone, welcome to Reiki Radio. Today we have the beautiful Sherisse Bisram. And Sherisse, I was telling you just before we started, I'm very excited to hear your story so that we can really learn from all the various ways that people go through their healing paths. So I know that you are a dancer. So I wanted to start with just that. If you could share a little bit about your background and how this has morphed into you wanting to support women in their empowerment.
Yeah, okay. I'll start with the dance element and I'll go back. So you might be able to tell I've got an English accent because I'm from England. Yeah, so I guess for me, a big part of my journey is obviously growing up in England as a person of colour in a predominantly white area. That played a massive part of my healing journey. And I guess yeah, the dance element really is something so small in the grand scheme of my life. And it's so funny because I think, you know, when you're a little girl and you have these ambitions, or a little person, and you really want to be something. And I felt like for me, dance was that outlet to be and express everything that I wanted to be and just let my soul sing. And I feel like that's such an important part of my healing journey, actually, because, you know, my home life was quite repressive, and also my outer world was repressive as well, in terms of like how society saw me. And then like, yeah, childhood experiences. Dance was my safe space, and I just got to really flourish and let that beautiful light inside of me shine out when I got to move. And it was just, yeah, wonderful. But equally, the dance industry did have limitations in itself, you know, in terms of like requirements for height and, you know, body shapes, and even ethnicity. At the time that I graduated, that was still an issue for me. So I feel like my whole life there's been a lot of limitations and walls that I've had to overcome and move through. But yeah, dance is, you know, I actually would say that dance showed me like discipline and consistency, which are also really massive parts of the healing journey. So I do think there's so much correlation there, as well as the fact that obviously I got to release those endorphins, those feel good hormones that, yeah, and the escapism, you know, just to
Yeah.
escape for like a little while and get away from like the everyday mundane painful experiences that I was having, really. And yeah, it's funny because I feel like being a dancer and a dance teacher, I never wanted to teach dance. That was never in my reality. I was like, no, I'm going to do the big shows, the big stage things. And you know, I did that. But the teaching element gave me this something else. And I feel like this was really my gift, is like, you know, being able to connect with people. For me, I was so unaware that that was a thing. Like when we're training as a dancer, you think that, you know, teachers are the ones that didn't make it. That's what you always think, and it's really judgmental. But I think, I don't know, dance school must leave you with that sort of taste in your mouth. But there's so much beauty and space in that connection with people that I didn't realize that was my gift, like being a people person. So I got to, like, you know, share my passion of dance, as well as just naturally doing this confidence building thing and like almost mentoring my students and like getting the best out of them. Because I think really and truly, I just I guess in the younger generation especially, I always see like a little bit of myself in them, you know, like what they needed more, and, you know, like giving them that little bit. And actually it was really lovely that that year of the pandemic, I had a couple of my students graduate and like leave to go to wherever they were doing after, and the parents came up to me and was like, you've given my child so much more than just dance, and I can't thank you enough. And like that was the real revelation for me, that I was like, wow, I've got a gift for this somewhere. And then really that ties back into the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's, you know, if I go back to the kind of the start of my life, it will kind of make sense, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Of
So
course.
yeah, as I said, growing up in Kent in England, very predominantly white area, and I'm a person of colour. So yeah, obviously lots of racism, things like that. But then also in my internal household, it was very volatile. One of my parents was an addict, an alcoholic. So it was just yeah, tough. And I think when you have a parent that's an addict, and then they're not working steadily, they're losing their job, the other parent then has to take the reign of, you know, doing all the work, being out. So I had both parents that were emotionally unavailable for different reasons. And then because they weren't there to be parents, I then kind of stepped up into that role of like being head of the household. you know, looking out for everyone. And then unfortunately, you know, when those aggressive spurts kicked in, I was obviously the first person to be, you know, protector. And it was just, I don't want to say I was robbed of my childhood, because I feel like that's a very judgmental thing to say, but I just feel like when I look back, the only times I have little moments of play and little moments of innocence, but I now look back with so much compassion and realize I had so much responsibility on my shoulders for such a young age. And it was so funny because the rest of my family would even like see me as this older role. And it's funny, even now, everyone always says to me, "Oh, you're such an old soul." And I'm like, it's trauma, guys. It's trauma. That's what it is. But yes, that was the start of, I guess, where everything came from in armoring up. So I just became very toxic masculine. And I think because that was missing from my household, I then fit into that role. And then I just wouldn't take no for an answer. You know, like I was just in that space where I was like, I'm going to get what I want out of life. And it's really funny because I remember, you know, my emotionally unavailable parent, she was just she just took it, you know, like she took all of the abuse and things like that. And I just remember being at 6 years old saying to myself, I will never let anyone talk to me like that or treat me like that. And that was really the start of the armoring up process. And then unfortunately throughout, so this has obviously been my journey, that was my life as I've gotten older. But then when I got to my teens, between the ages of 12 to 17, I had 11 members of my family die. Just for different reasons, you know, it wasn't planned, but obviously, you know, when you're a person of color, you have lots of relatives. It's just the way it is, isn't it? And yeah, it was hard, but every funeral I went to, I just again became number and number and number, armoring up, layering up, layering up. And you know, the worst thing people say is be strong for your family. So I'm like, okay, cool, I'll be strong. Another layer of armor goes on, to the point where now as an adult I've probably been to about 25 to 30 funerals, and I feel like prior to my healing journey I probably cried at about 5 of them. That's it, you know, like I was so emotionally numb and unavailable. Yeah, so it was just, yeah, difficult, because then obviously I'm armoring up because of my childhood experiences, because of racism as well. And you know, a really important fact about that is I would never say I've been bullied. I've not been bullied in my time at all, because that toxic masculine protected me. You know, that energy of feeling like I just don't like bullying, full stop, though. You know, like anyone that says anything out of line, I don't even have to know the person and I'll be like, don't say that, because that's just who I am as a person. And yeah, in times where I ever had been called names or things like that, I would just stop it in its tracks. So for me, I just feel like I'm thinking about the next person in line. Like if it stops with me, then that person will know and think twice about saying anything again about anyone else in that way. Also, it's educating people and things like that, which, you know, isn't our responsibility. But equally, if we don't play our part in trying to make the change, then it just keeps repeating the same pattern, which is something I've never wanted to do, even at that young age. So yeah, just kind of, and it's really funny because my aunt is a foster carer, and this is kind of the pinnacle of where my healing journey started. Was she basically said to me that, you know, my whole life I've been had to be, and like made myself be strong physically and mentally, to the point where my armor was up and my walls were up so high that I didn't let anything in. And then unfortunately, when you're not letting anything in, you're not letting anything out either, so you can bust, right? And yeah, so if I go back a little bit further, so then obviously I've gone through all the death, all the childhood trauma. I get into the dance industry and it's tough. You know, again, there's extra layers of why I'm not good enough. And, you know, I always say that I'd never fit into a box. There was never a thing that I could just be, you know, even like my ethnicity, my family from Guyana in South America. So as you'll know, everyone looks completely different from there. And that again, there's not quite a set box for that, especially in England, in Kent. It's a very limited number of us that are there, you know. And if you're from the Caribbean, I think you understand that people are all different, they look different, but when you're not, you have no idea. But yeah, I guess even my dance style, the way I move, I'm very much my own person, and I always have been. And that's really, now I use that. That's my gold dust moment. There is that my favorite thing that I say always is, you are the only you there is, and that's your superpower. Because really, that was the making of me, and that's that alchemizing moment for me, is knowing that everything I've been through in my life has led me to this point where I can now transmute that pain that I went through into the power to lead me into helping others. And yeah, so I guess all of this build up of my life got me to that point where I was started then to do the work, started to unpack all this stuff, and like surface level, I came across The Secret, started doing all of those bits. And then yeah, the pandemic hit. And that was the point where I think my whole life was like, whoa. And I don't know if anyone's into astrology, but I had my Saturn return in the same sort of phase. And that's all about kind of, readjusting and all of that, like your whole life kind of is faced in front of you and you're like kind of have to deal with it. And it was because we had the time and the space, again, that toxic masculine energy. I was going at 100 miles an hour doing everything. I'll do 4 or 5 jobs in one day. I'd be absolutely shattered in pure burnout. And yeah, it all got on top of me. The pandemic hit and I was like, right, I've got to do the deep dive now. So I started to accumulate, well, I guess I'd always had these little tools and practices like journaling. I dabbled in meditation and, obviously dance and movement was a massive part of my life, yoga, things like that I really enjoyed. And then, yeah, when I had to do the deep dive, it was that real, it was the dark night of the soul when everything finally clicked and I was like, oh my God. And I think it was because I did my master's in that time, because obviously nothing was going on. I was like, right, what else can I do? I was planning to move to America. The pandemic hit. I couldn't do that anymore. And then when I thought about it, I was like, do I actually want to go to America, or was that my dream 10 years ago? And now I've evolved, So it was all of these questions. I was like, why, how, what am I doing? Who am I? You know what I mean? It was all of those moments that came into play. And yeah, I guess I just went back to like, what am I good at and what do I love? And it's connecting with people. But then doing that research in the masters, I found that dance has been used for interventions for like lots of different types of people, and especially people that have been through trauma. Now, when I started to do that research, I was like, hold on a minute, that sounds really familiar, what they went through. Hold on a minute. I was like, they had that severity, that I was like, whoa. And it was all these like light bulb moments are coming up. So I don't know if you've heard of ACEs. I don't know if you have that, but it's basically adverse childhood experiences, and it's a test. So I filled in the test and I scored 8 out of 10, and I was like, oh, okay, right. So this is trauma gate. This is where we're at. This is like all my whole life has now made sense to me, and it's come down like a ton of bricks. And I'm like, I can't believe I went through that as a child. And like I speak to my parent about it now. We have a really lovely relationship, but a lot of my healing they've mirrored too. Like they've grown with me, which has been really beautiful. And we acknowledge that wasn't the reality that at that time. But yeah, it's just been, I guess the pandemic, hit me hard, but in a really beautiful way. I like to say I broke open, like everything around me just crumbled. And I realized that all of the character traits that I was carrying out, my self-awareness became so deep that I was aware that how, like, sometimes people would call me aggressive. And I would use the whole, oh, what, because I'm a person of color and I'm a woman, that I'm aggressive. If this was a man with him, I'd throw that card in. But actually, when I looked at my life, I was like, no, I am a little bit, I am a little bit aggressive. So I had to really take off these layers, of like, and the deep healing work and the meditation, the breath work, and something shifted in my whole body the very first time I did breath work. And I'd had IBS for like a really long period of my life. Obviously, it's trauma related, and I never knew that. And I did this real deep childhood healing shadow work, breath work day thing. And I just remember coming out of it feeling so light, and my IBS just stopped. I just didn't have it from that point on. So whatever was trapped in my body, I let it out. And I was like, whoa, this is how it's meant to feel to be human. I didn't realize I'd had this pain in my stomach my whole life that I'd just been holding on to. And what else I would say is that I've lived in constant fight mode. Like I was in survival mode for so long that I was always ready to fight and hyper vigilant, like always looking around every room I walked into. I was like, is there a potential danger in this room that I have to be aware of? And it's funny now because my friends joke about it now. We still have like a little bit like, oh, Sherisse is here, it'll be fine, she'll sort it out. I don't have to be that person anymore. And that's a really beautiful thing for me to be able to share. And I think that's really what led me to the mentoring side of things, is like when you have the tools to overcome anything in your life, whatever it is, but especially when it's like deep rooted in every part of your being. And I fully believe that like I am a cycle breaker in my family lineage. Like I know that for a fact because there's so many other members of my family that are still living this reality, and I've just chosen not to. Even choosing to be a dancer, I chose not to follow the pattern that was, expected of me or whatever. And I know that this is the real, I guess the thing that we're all looking for. I wish that everyone knew what I knew and could have what I have in terms of the tools and practices to overcome every obstacle. Because I always say that, life's not linear. We're always going to relive circles of trauma and of pain and of, things are going to get in our way. But once you have the tools to overcome it, you're always going to get through it, but easier each time. And I really feel like I was tested again last year with this, like I experienced, I was on a train and someone jumped in front of it. So I witnessed a suicide. And then I also had a death of like a really close family friend. And that was really hard because it kind of triggered me back to old patterns. And I was like, wow, okay, now I've got to put my tools that I've used and that I teach into practice. And really and truly, that was the universe showing me that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, because coming out of it again, it's like, I don't want to say I'm stronger, but I'm even more whole. And it's putting these broken pieces together. Like I don't know where it is. It's in the Far East, but they use
Japan.
like gold. Japan, yeah, exactly that. Use the gold to like heal the pots, and that's exactly everything I feel like in my life has just been this alchemy. Because yeah, and it's weird because I feel like now I didn't feel the pain of my childhood in my childhood, but now when I get the flashbacks, it's like, whoa, like that was so hard. And I really do sympathize with myself because I'm like, I guess this is why a lot of the work I do is so important, because I don't want anyone to go through that. And if they do, like, I want to be able to support them through it. And that's why my work is so broad in terms of age ranges, because yeah, I teach workshops to the schools and also like the individual mentoring and things like that. But I guess it's almost everything I do is like for my younger self or for the self that maybe didn't do the work. I see myself in those people in those situations. Yeah, I feel like that's an overall.
No, I mean, no, well, you said there's a lot that I'm like, oh, wow. I mean, it's really interesting hearing your journey. And one of the things that stood out, I think a lot of us can relate to, of course, is that recognition, hindsight of the different roles that we adapt into as children. And a lot of times we don't recognize how those patterns and experiences impact who we're being, present day. So there are two things with what you said. One, it's interesting how the trauma caused you to put on all of this armor. And while that caused even physical challenges for you with the IBS and, not letting anything in or out, it also simultaneously gave you the strength that you needed to get through other challenges in life, which is very interesting. I think a lot of times we don't see that there's also some beauty sometimes in the challenges that we go through. But you also mentioned that it was during the pandemic where you were kind of forced into that space of silence to observe. There's so much about your story, Sherisse. Wait, I'm like, which question do I want to ask you first? But I think that experience for you really highlights the importance of us finding quiet spaces just to be reflective so that we can get to know ourselves in deeper ways. But I wanted to know now, I mean, with doing the work, the meditation, the breath work, all that you do, even with the teaching that you mentioned, even though something started to crack open and you start connecting the dots of like, wow, this is what I experienced and this is how it impacted me. How did you go through that? Because a lot of people, when the stuff starts coming up, just the realization can be quite challenging. So what was it like for you having those moments of realization, and how did you work through those moments?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said, having that stillness, which is something I never let myself have. And I think a lot of people that have had trauma, they keep themselves busy so they don't have to feel. And that was something I share a lot because that was how I lived my life. And it's like I said, the pandemic, that stillness, the being forced to do it. And I guess it was because while I was doing the research, like I said, I was in the stillness, so there was lots of gaps in between that made things clear for me. But it's a really funny story, because I think I was trying to still deal with it in a really toxic masculine way, like, you know, action, action, action. How can I keep moving through this, moving forward? I've made it this far, I'll be fine, you know, like that mentality. And it was really funny because one day, I think as well, what obviously with trauma and stuff, and also with the Saturn return and all of these spiritual awakening things, everything around you crumbles as well in your life. So friends started to, like, I started to have rows with friends that I'd had for years, and just all of this stuff just came to a blow. And like, to the point where my friends were questioning who I am and like what my beliefs are. Like, one of my friends said to me, you can't be angry at the world. And now that was something I've never been, although I've been like traumatized heavily, which I'm aware of. I've never been angry at the world, because it's not the world's fault that I'm the way I am. But, you know, I guess I had a lot to think about, and I was still trying to power through it. And then I just fell down the stairs. Now, this has been my family home for like 30 years, and I fell down the stairs, and that is the universe to be like, stop, stop doing that. And I was like, yeah, okay. I was like, universe, I'll see you. And I cried for 20 minutes. I cried for 20 minutes non-stop. And it was so funny because my little niece was there, and must have been about 3 years old at the time, and she's never seen me cry, and she just didn't know what to do. She was really confused. She was like, oh, this is different, you know, because I've never been that person that's been comfortable showing emotion. You know, even friends that I'd had for 10 years, they'd never seen me cry before. And that was the real moment for me, was to like, that was the breaking open moment. That was like, why are you trying to hold yourself together? Who are you trying to prove a point to? It's nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like, this idea that strength is pristine and, you know, held together, well held, or, you know, it's even like how we talk about some women, you know, when we look up to them, we're like, oh, she's really well put together. It's like that's just one part of her. And actually, I'm sure that she would beg to differ, you know, if you spoke to that person. But yeah, my idea of strength was, you know, ironclad, this ball of like, yeah, just stillness and stiffness, and it's rigid. And actually, when I cracked that open and like all of this like stuff started to flow out of it, I'm like, actually, that's where the beauty is, because that's what people connect to. It's that, you know, if I came into, you know, talk to you and I was still fully armored up, there'd be nothing to share, because I wouldn't be willing to open up. And I think that's the whole beauty of all of this stuff and the story. So I guess it was, yeah, falling down the stairs, opening up to my emotions, and then just letting them pour out for however long it needed to be. And it was a good, you know, few weeks, few months. I would say probably, I think that happened in the April. So I think probably a whole year, a year and a half, I just let myself feel. I let myself be aware of everything that was coming forward. And then that was when I really got into journaling, and I was just finding these outlets, you know, like mental releases, where I could just, you know, I could also soundboard to people, but I found that quite difficult at times, because no one else had kind of lived the same type of life as me. My sibling had, and my parent, but it was different because obviously we all experience things in a different way. So doing the journaling was a real safe space for me, and I didn't realize that I'd always done journaling. And now it was like up in the game a bit. So I was finding more prompts. I was, you know, becoming more aware of spirituality, which is something that's always been embedded in my life, but never quite realized to the extent of, you know, like, I think when you read The Secret, you have an idea that there's like a higher power, but actually connecting to something like that changed my life. Like, knowing that, you know, everything in my life had to happen the way it did, and like, you know, like all of that stuff is like, we're always being divinely led, you know, whether you're aware of it or not. And I think that was a real beautiful part of my healing, was knowing that this is all how it's supposed to be, and I had to get to this point. And in the lockdown as well, like on the other side of this, like, as I was coming out of it, I started to do blogs, and that the reception from the blogs was just so lovely. Now, it didn't go like anywhere further than my own community of people that I had, but, you know, being able to open up about how I felt allowed other people to open up about how they felt to me. And I was getting random people just message me saying, thank you for sharing that. I've not spoken to anyone about this, and you've encouraged me to open up about this, or like be this person. And it was just mind-blowing that, you know, and I think that's a real lesson that I've learned, and the work that I'm doing, you know, is that we are a mirror of our whole universe. So, you know, what we put out to the world will receive back. And I think that was all part of this healing process, because now it's like, if I can share and lead with my vulnerability, other people feel safe to do the same. And then we normalize it. We normalize the fact that actually we're all a little bit broken, and it's actually just beautiful, you know, like we don't have to be this idea of what society and the world wants us to be, and even our own limiting beliefs, you know, like I grew up thinking that I was a like ugly, weird, fat brown girl. That was like my reality of how I thought and saw myself, because that was the way, you know, like my family made jokes about me being fat. I was never fat, by the way. I was just, my sister is just really petite and I was just normal size, to be honest. But if you're told something so many times, especially as a kid, you believe it. Then obviously the fact that beauty standards were obviously predominantly white growing up, and also in my area, and yeah, just feeling different, I guess, in that respect. Wasn't different in terms of, well, I guess I've always been different in terms of my personality because I'm outspoken, but I fit in. I had a lot of friends and stuff, but my idea in my head that I'd held on to so tightly was that I was this unattractive young girl. And I think I got to like 21 and I started to work in nightclubs doing shots. I don't know if you have the shot girls. Yeah, that was my first job. And actually that was a really beautiful experience, because I'd been so caught up in this idea of me being ugly that it's actually other girls coming up to me saying, "Oh my God, I love your hair," or "You're so beautiful." And I'd be like, "What?" And then I'd go home and be like, "These people, like, I don't know if they're really drunk or what." And then it was only when I started to actually allow myself to receive the compliment that I again undid another layer of like feeling and like beautiful, allowing myself to feel beautiful. And you know, beauty isn't about what's on the outside, it is the inside. And that's something I've always had. It's like a really nice soul, I would say, is that, you know, I'd go above and beyond for people, but equally that's a boundary game. You know, like I became a people pleaser because I was aware that I could sometimes come across aggressive. So I was like, okay, so how do I then fix this situation if I've offended someone? But what I know now is that, you know, what I say is that offense is always taken, it's never given. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's just deeper understanding of ourselves. I think that's a real critical point of life, and I think that's the good stuff. That's that good juice, you know, like if everyone drank that, it's that self-awareness. If we're so aware of our flaws and also our greatness, we can move through life in such a powerful and flow state, you know. I think when we're trying to mold ourselves to be what we think we should be, that's where we get caught up in like that anxiety, that feeling less than, adopting those limited beliefs, all of these things. But you know, I think in order to get to that place where you are self-aware, you are in line with who you want to be and all that stuff, you have to do the work. And I think that's the thing that kind of holds people back. It's like, one, how do I do the work? And two, am I willing and dedicated to doing it? But I promise you, like I say to everyone, you know, that uphill climb to get to, you know, that point where you're in that healing zone. And you know, like healing is always continuous, but when you get through the trauma, through the limited beliefs, all of that stuff, and you stand on the top of that peak, the view from the top is so worth it. And I just want everyone to be in that space, you know, regardless of how much trauma they've experienced. It's like we all deserve to just see life in a really beautiful way. And it's like I was almost like looking for flaws in everything, whereas my whole mindset's so different now. I'm like, you know, what great thing can happen to me today? I'm like, thank you, universe, for showing me how easy my life gets to be. You know, I'm saying these things, and you know, affirmations has been a massive part of my life. I've really and truly retrained my whole subconscious mind to the point where like I was saying things and not really believing them. You know, like you do it, you're like, oh yeah, I'm brave, I'm strong, I'm enough, I'm beautiful, all these things. And then one day I just woke up in the middle of the night and I was saying it in my sleep, and I was like, it was at that point where I realized I'd made a massive shift. And then now I believe it. I look at myself in the mirror like whenever I can, and I tell myself all of my affirmations, and it's crazy and it's woo woo, but I tell you what, it works. You know, all of this stuff is just like, you know, we hear about it and we're like, what? But doing the work is the best thing you will ever do for your whole life, like hands down. I can't tell anyone enough that the weight that I was carrying in my life, that heavy armor, and like you have to imagine it as, you know, this metal armor that you're carrying around in everything you do. When you take it off, there's like, oh, it's like a release, and it's like, yeah, you can flow from that state. You can't flow if you're still being weighed down by the armor that you're carrying. Sorry, I went off on a tangent
Yeah,
again, didn't I?
no, it's okay. I no, it just struck me this theme of you coming back to taking off the armor. But a few things you said again, I mean, I like and I hope that people catch with so much that you share in your story. You had experiences of being very uncomfortable, but you would do whatever it is that was needed for you anyway. So for example, like, you know, crying when you fell down the stairs, that can be very hard, especially when you're used to suppressing your feelings, but you allowed it anyway.
Mm,
And just allowing that movement. But also at the start of the story, you mentioned how all of the restrictions or guidelines that were put in place around dance with, you know, the race, the height, the weight, the this, the that, but you still did it anyway, you know. So I love that all woven throughout your story is there's a lot of opposition, a lot of challenge, a lot of story even, but you did whatever it was you felt called to do, you did it anyway. And I also like with what you're sharing, it reminds us that looking at ourselves, because I think a lot of people have a challenge with seeing that they're wrong, seeing the flaws,
mm,
you know, the self criticism that will arise if I look in the mirror and then I have to take accountability or ownership. But you also see that it's not all wrong. Like you, again, with your story, it's like, yeah, you know, I had this story or I had this encounter or I experienced this, but here's the gold. So I think you have a beautiful way of acknowledging the truth of what was painful or challenging, but also seeing how it helped to refine you and shape exactly who you are in the process of it all. But the other thing with the accepting the story, because even you saying how when you're young, you accepted these projections of who you were, what you look like, and then here, then you start getting into this self-awareness practices and using mantra to simply just change the story. And I think that's a really powerful message too, because I don't think we always consciously acknowledge how much we're just accepting stories, the stories of other people, the stories we make up, and those moments where you recognize, like, oh, I could actually change the story. Like I could just see it
mm,
in another way. But I want to back up even more to what you shared in the beginning because you do phenomenal work now. So like just so people listening know, now at this point in your life, you have traveled the world performing, you even, you know, did dancing in a Marvel movie, like you've created this um beautiful career that started as just an outlet and an escape for
mm.
you. So I wanted to know with that as well, with your story, and then you've already allowed yourself to become this phenomenal dancer, and then you start merging the two. So could you talk a little bit about how you have taken what you've gone through combined with dance and then turned this into a way to help empower even young women, the programs that you do to support young women, but even the personal one-on-one work and classes that you offer?
Thank you. Yeah, I guess because for me, like dance has played such a shaping role in my life that I just felt like there was more to it than what people are aware of, like
Yeah.
and thank you for acknowledging, my determination to get through. And I definitely would say that that's the masculine energy in my body that's been there, and I thank it because I went through a real stage of trying to eradicate it. But again, we have to realize that we're all things, aren't we? There's polarity in
Yeah.
everything we are. And I think that's really lovely that you highlight that. So thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I love dance and I love what it gave me, that. And I believe, in the way I practice and what I teach is that in order to really release, the anxiety, the depression, the feelings that we have, we need a mental outlet and a physical outlet. So I guess in my programs, it is using dance as that physical outlet and making it the embodiment of everything we're trying to learn in terms of self-love, self-worth, boundaries. Things like that can be physically carried out, like we can actually physically express a boundary in dance motion, and also self-love, like when you're dancing, no matter what your ability is, the endorphins that release, it's like that is that connection, and like your connection to your mind, body, soul, like it's all in there, you know, like intertwined without even realizing. And I think sometimes if you just went to a dance class that was just dance, you'd walk out of it and feel good, and you'd be like, that was nice, I might learn 5, 6, 7, 8, you know, that was lovely. But in everything that I do, I really connect to how it feels, and I think that's the most important thing. You know, like my classes that I teach now, so I'm kind of sifting a little bit out of the dance industry, but dance is now a tool that I use more than anything. But I still have I teach at Pineapple Dance Studios in London, and they do online classes, so you can always connect online if anyone is watching in the US. But it's all about how it makes you feel. What does that movement make you feel like? What's the song make you feel like? I'm really intentional about the songs that I use, and you know what I'm trying to get out of it. And I think that's the combination of like my healing journey to the use of dance as well. Not only does it make you feel good on a very surface level, but deep within as well. And if you're aware of that deep healing that you're doing while you're dancing, I think that's a really beautiful space. So yeah, I guess I've just combined like the tools that have helped me through my healing process, which is again the meditation, the journaling, the self-awareness, all of these things, and I've broken them down into like steps that are understandable, but then we're also embodying them, and that's the dance element, you know. So it's that mental release and also that physical release, and it's a full circle, and it's a harmony of like just a beautiful experience, you know. Like I've actually made my own journal that is you can buy it, you know. My journal was empowerment journal, and it's breaking down all of these concepts, you know, like I said, the self-worth, self-acceptance, self-compassion, all of these things. And then I teach this in a workshop format, so I get to deliver workshops in schools and workplaces where again I can use dance, and I could also not use dance, because without dance it's all about the connection to people, you know. Like if I'm teaching this in a wider setting and I'm not using dance, it's about how do we break this down that's easy to understand, but also what are we comfortable to share with each other? Because again, like I said earlier, you know, that mirror of who we are, when we create a safe space, especially in a school setting or a workplace setting, when you know the people that you're working with inside out, there's just so much more trust, there's so much more safety, there's so much more beauty that can be made from these spaces, you know. And I think that's a really important thing about sharing, because I didn't have that freedom to do that at the time when I was healing. And I think that's a really massive thing that you know, my soul called for. But being in different settings my whole life, different dance groups, things like that, I'd always had a little inkling of it, like a little tiny like drip feed of like these different groups where I got to outlet just a tiny bit each place. So whether I can create that on a grand scale for people, it's just going to help and speed up this journey and this healing. So yeah, I have the workshops I take into places like that, and I also do the one-to-one sessions with people, and that is a deeper dive, you know, like, but it's exactly the same content, you know. I just format it in a different way, you know, the same thing. Like we're going through a journey, and I think this is what's really important for me about my self-love and empowerment practices that I teach and I call myself, is that I'm taking the participants on a journey of self-discovery. Now, that's something, you know, like I think when we hear self-love and empowerment, we think very surface level of like the shiny stuff, the like cherry on top of the cake. Whereas my work is in the underneath. It's like, how do we unlearn, unpack, and do all of these stripping back things, you know, like how do we get to that little core? And I always say that core of us is like a little light that flickers, and it burns really bright, but we cover it up with everything we've learned, our experiences, the hard stuff, you know. It all caves in over this light to the point where the light's only just a tiny little flicker, but it's always burning. And then when we take all the layers off, the light gets to be amplified, and then we can build a solid foundation underneath the light to lift it up to the really real top of the surface, so then that light can shine out so brightly. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've called my program, I've got a 6-week program coming out that's for women, and it's open for women 16 and up, because I feel like 16 and up is a really beautiful time where we become aware of ourselves, and we've been through the schooling system, so we might be aware that we've adopted patterns and things that we're not really okay with. We're also stepping into full womanhood, you know. But also, you know, for women that are wherever, however you're at your life, it's just someone that's ready to do this work. And I've called it permission to shine, because it is that. Are you giving yourself the permission to really shine, to do that inner work, and to come out on the other side? And, you know, like my program isn't for people that are like not willing. you know, like you've got to be willing to do the deep dive, and it is in a group setting as well, so that's even more beautiful. Again, this safe space, this sister circle that we're going to create, it's like all about healing and healing together. And it's like, you know, like these little lights that get together. It's, you know, like when it's like at a concert, you know, and everyone holds their phones up and then the whole arena shines so brightly. That's really my intention for this, is just to give women this space. And this program in particular is for women, because I've only ever been a woman. I can't really share on a different avenue yet in that respect, because I've not been there. Whereas a lot of the talks that I do empower men to empower women and things like that. So I do connect with men, and in the workplaces and in schools I'm doing things with boys as well. But this particular program is aimed at women especially, because I just feel like, yeah, it's kind of my whole life in an expressive format, and I'm going to use movement as well within that, but it's very much focused on the healing element of, yeah, doing the dive. And I think my one-to-one clients especially, it's all about that deep inner work. And I just think that, you know, with self-love, it's almost like people don't see that as it. They think it's this like little thing of like just doing the affirmations and having a bath and face masks, you know. They don't think it's like the inner work. But yeah, I guess it's that thing. I made a comment about it the other day. It's like, if you spend that like a couple of £100 on a pair of shoes, but you feel crap about yourself, you're gonna regret buying them shoes, right? So it's almost like you have to invest the money in yourself, do the work, uncover everything. Because when you love yourself fully and you feel beautiful, you feel empowered, you feel all of the things you deserve to feel about yourself, like you are the main character energy, you know. Again, rewriting that story, that's exactly what we're doing. And that's one of the things I like to say is, you know, we're now using that story that we've had, we're unpacking it, we're getting to the root of it and understanding why it had to happen the way it did. And now we take the pen and we rewrite the rest. Then it doesn't matter what shoes you wear. You could wear, you know, a £2 pair of shoes and still feel like an absolute incredible person, you know, like you're not defined by your exterior. And that's really the pinnacle of my work, is it's in the inner work, it's the inside out. So how can we shine and love ourselves from the inside so it amplifies outwardly onto the rest of the world? And it's that beautiful, again, mirror, where when you're shining really bright, it gives permission to other people to do the same thing. So yeah, that's the gist of it all.
No, that's really, really beautiful. And yeah, it's, you know, this is why I'm so glad that we had this conversation, so that people listening could just hear the various ways that people are doing this work. Because, you know, a lot of the work that I've done has been very focused on energy work, very specific techniques, meditation, and yes, journaling and these things as well. But it's so amazing to hear all the different ways that we can come in to the same space. But I also, it's fascinating to hear that you're able to bring this work into schools. I think these younger generations are so fortunate that they have access to this type of training, and people coming in to facilitate this type of work now. Because I think, man, when I was growing up, that would have been amazing to have. So it's really beautiful that you are taking the time and making the effort to share this with young women. So I have to ask you though, Sherisse, about your class. So one, can people take the course online, the Permission to Shine?
Yes.
And then also with dance. Now, the dance portion of your class, is it free form, or are you teaching us how to move? Are there certain movements that help with expressing different parts, or how does that work?
Yeah, so with the program Permission to Shine, it's 6 weeks and it's online. So it's going to be an hour and a half online, and you'll get access to the members portal, so you get to, you know, connect with each other. But yeah, so it's going to be formatted. So each participant will get my journal, and they'll have prompts to do, and we'll just unpack lots of different things. You know, in the session we'll share, we'll also do some individual work, but then in Permission to Shine, it is going to be free movements. It's all going to be about, you know, putting on your favorite song, moving around, or we're going to be shifting and releasing some tension. So it's going to be the combination of, like, you know, are we connecting to love in this element, you know, like self-love, self-worth, or are we shifting that bad energy, that stagnant energy? And it'll be that's how dance will be combined in that setting. But obviously, if people just want to dance with me, the classes, like I said, at Pineapple Dance You Guys online, are available to just come and dance, like learn choreography or whatever. But yeah, in my program, it's very much shaped around how it's going to help us release the things we don't want and encourage the things we do to come into our being.
Yeah. And what type of dance do you teach and perform now? Because in the beginning, with what you were saying around the very structured formatting of your dance, what type of dance did you begin with, and now what do you?
Yeah, so I trained in the classical styles of dance, but I also that was never really my I never really felt very seen in that space. It was kind of
Mm.
just for discipline and like, just to get your body moving. But then when I found street dance, I was like, wow, this is my thing. And that was in my teenage years. And that was when I really connected to dance as a whole, was when I did street dancing. So I came away from street dancing when I was studying, just because there wasn't many available options in terms of training for street dance back then. So I kind of went back into like more classical, like musical theatre style stuff. And I did actually spend a few years trying to get work in musical theatre, and it just wasn't I wasn't the right dancer for it at that time. And like cruise ships, things like that, I was too short, all these things. So when I went back to street dance, that was when all of the doors started to open up for me. So now I would say I'm more commercial, which is a bit more of a combination of modern styles of dancing. So there's a element of like dance hall in there, and like, all of these different kind of samba vibes, and everything's kind of a bit more versatile. So world dance styles is definitely something that I do as well. I also do heels, so dancing in high heels, like it's kind of a bit, it's a technique in itself, and that really opened up so much for me, because prior to doing heels, dancing heels, I was so hip hop, everything
Mm.
was so hip hop for me. Trainers only, like I didn't really know how to connect with my body. So dancing in heels has really opened up my divine feminine energy 100%. And now when I teach that, it's just a really beautiful space. Now I actually have a class called Sexy R&B, but it wasn't the name that I would have chosen for the class. But what I always say to everyone as they come in is like, this class is for I'm like sort of renaming the word sexy, and I'm taking it back. It's like sexy is whatever you want it to be for you, and it's all about connecting to your body, feeling safe, and also feeling sensual. Like you can just tap into that because you're allowed to. But and those classes are for like just the dance classes are for everyone, so male and female. And the first class, the commercial one, is for everyone, and then the sexy R&B 16 and up, just to keep it obviously like a bit more. I don't want younger people doing that kind of stuff. Well, I mean, they
Yeah,
can if they
yeah.
want to, but I'm not under my rule. But you know what I mean? Yeah, like, do that in your own time. But yeah, even the school stuff, that's very much like mixed. So that's boys and girls. And I
Right.
use street dance and commercial within that, because I feel like it's kind of utilizing that dance element that I've had the experience in. It's like nice for them to do something that's familiar, like especially like I use artists like Lizzo, like what's it, Juice, because that's such like a feel good song, and they all know it and they all love it, and it's just like choreography that can be used for all genders.
Yeah.
um so that's like, I guess the beauty of the dance element that's like fed into my work.
Well, I have to ask you too. I mean, I'm very, thank you for sharing all that you've shared, but I also, it speaks to what you said a while ago, that you really, in your work, you lead with vulnerability, and you have such an amazing story. I can't believe our time is almost up, but I have to ask you this, as we're wrapping up, because you mentioned in your childhood how you had to, well, because of experience, you got into this masculine, toxic masculine energy, but then there was also this aspect of the masculine that drove you and kept you determined and helped you move forward. But then now you're also mentioning how certain aspects of dance kind of crack open and help you connect to that feminine energy as well. So, with all the work that you're doing and the different aspects of yourself that you're now seeing and embracing, and which parts you're transforming, I have to ask, since you started all of this, what would you say has been the most significant change? Not just in, well, yeah, in you as a person, but how that change in you has impacted your overall life and your journey?
Wow, that's a great question. um I guess, oh, that's hard. I think it would be that I was forcing every element of my life, like forcing to get through. Like I was in survival, like trying to to get to where I thought that I needed to be. I guess maybe to be respected, to be seen, to be heard, like my whole life leading up to, being a dancer, all of that, like I said, all the no's, all the setbacks, it was like I was determined to win, regardless of what that took. And each time it was taking a bit of me, like that sacrifice, that disconnect from my intrinsic sole purpose, and I was just pushing against everything to just get there. And then, like when I started to kind of be aware of myself, I was kind of trying to tread a little bit more carefully, but still in that same direction. And then obviously the pandemic just made me stop in my tracks. And I guess I realized that everything I was doing was, I wouldn't say surface level, but it was for the wrong reason almost, it's for validation. And it's because I wouldn't feel worthy in myself. So the minute that I became more aware of myself and I built my self-worth, everything I did from that point on was led from my soul's purpose, like that connection to who I really am. And I guess I would say that everything just felt lighter from that point on, like I don't feel any resistance anymore. I won't say any, I feel so much less, like let's say I lived at a 10. I'm now, occasionally I go maybe from a 1 to a 2 at times, but I can pull myself up on it, like I'm no longer in burnout. I guess my whole understanding of life changed because I just stopped forcing the things that were meant for me, and I just started to flow into the things that were. And that does take that knowing of self. I think if you don't know yourself and you don't know what you really want, who you truly are, and all of these beautiful things, if you don't know that, you won't be able to move forward in the direction that you need to go in. And I think that's a really powerful point. And again, the very most, that is it. That's the middle point. It's like, if you know who you are and where you want to go, everything around you will gravitate and align to you in this soul's path, and you won't have to force anything. And I think that's been my real lesson, because I know when things are right, because they feel easier and everything starts to flow in the right direction. It's like, yeah, there we go, that's the reminder that I don't need to do that anymore, and we're human, that's a really big part of everything I've learned as well, is that we're going to dip, we're going to have down days still, we're not going to be like soaring high every day. And it's acknowledging the fact that, again, once you have the tools to get through anything, you just take it for what it is. And yeah, I would say everything just feels easier and lighter, and I feel free. And I think that's it. I think I was shackled to the armor inside, like my insides were shackled by the armor, and now I've kind of broken that open. It's like freedom just feels peaceful. And I never had inner peace before, like never. I was so in turmoil and didn't want to express my emotions, and I was emotionally unavailable. So then I was gravitating to emotionally unavailable people, and like all of this cycle. And now I've kind of like broken that open, the awareness has grown. Yeah, I just know that everything is working out as it should in a really soft way. And I think that's the thing that I would say I've learned more than anything is softness.
Sherisse, you framed that so beautifully. I mean, I think especially and I hope people really caught that whole idea of we have to know ourselves in order to be able to flow in the right direction. But it also takes that working towards the freeing ourselves of the old story, shackles, armor, misidentification, all of the things. And it does take work. But from what you've shared, hopefully people really can feel how beautiful that journey is, even though it can be tough. And you're going to have those days where you feel like, what the hell is happening? Like, I'm losing my mind. No, but on the other side of it, I mean, there's just so much beauty that starts to emerge. And again, I think you did a beautiful job of really expressing that. But one of the things that you also just shared that I think is a great reminder is slowing down doesn't mean that we're not putting in effort, or it doesn't mean that we're not, working towards our goals just because we take these moments to really tune in or slow down or readjust ourselves so that we can get back into the right flow. I can't thank you enough for everything that you shared today, my love. I'm so glad that we got the chance to meet. So, Sherisse, if you could please let everyone know your website, how to find you on social media, what's the best ways to connect with you?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And what I'll just say to round that off is that, when you're not in flow, you're swimming against the current. Whereas if you just stop swimming, sometimes the current will take you where you need to be. So that's like a nice way to
Beautiful.
round that off. Yes, I am. So my website is literally just my name.com. So www.SherisseBisram.com. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. They are all at Sherisse_Bisram. And yeah, if you would love to join the program, I'd love to have you for people that are ready to do the work. And you can find out all the details about that on my website and on my Instagram. Again, it's called Permission to Shine. And you can just drop me a DM or you can click the link that's in my bios. And yeah, and just to round off really, I think I want to leave with everyone is just to know that like I said, you are the only you there is, and that is your superpower. Like, you have this beautiful light inside of you, and if you allow yourself and give yourself the permission to shine, you'll shine so bright and you won't realize how many people are impacted by your light. So yeah.
That is absolutely beautiful. So again, it's SherisseBisram.com or on social media, Sherisse_Bisram, but the links for everything will be below. And the Permission to Shine course is available online, and that will start at the end of February, the end of
Yes.
this month. So be sure to go check out Sherisse and her work today. Thank you so much again for being here, my love, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, beautiful alchemist. That was a gorgeous conversation, right? I am very excited. Just to let you know, there are a lot of upcoming interviews and conversations that are a little different than what we have typically heard on Reiki Radio. And it's really because I want us all to open up and recognize how this ability to heal and the ways that we work through these processes are so broad and varied. And so you will hear from a lot of people coming up, their stories and how whatever it is that they are drawn to has supported their path of self-realization. And I'm very thankful for Sherisse Bisram. Again, if you want to learn more about Sherisse and her work, please go to her website, SherisseBisram.com, or you can find her on social media at Sherisse_Bisram. And she has that upcoming class, Permission to Shine. I believe it begins next week. So if you are interested in that, be sure to go to her site or go to her Instagram and DM her right away about that. This was a lot of fun. Don't forget to also download the Energetic Alchemist app. I will see you in our live roundtable discussions. I look forward to you just being able to access more around energetic alchemy and the tools that I will share to support you on your path. Like I said, when the podcast first started, I shared a lot more of my own personal journey, what worked for me, what was supporting me. And now it has transitioned more into interview style. But if you go to the app, you will get more of the content that I share with you about my practice, what it is that I can lend to support you in your practice. All of that is there conveniently. You can have it right on your phone. So download the app, just sign up for it. You can access free content or you can sign up for membership for more content. It's up to you, but I'm so thankful that you are here. I want to thank Sherisse again. And for all of you beautiful alchemists, I will see you next week. Remember to always journey in love.